You think you're being loving, you think you're being patient, but what if everything you're doing right now is actually making them pull away faster? Here's the truth no one tells you about avoidance. The things that feel the most natural to you, the things that feel like love, are the exact things that destroy your value in their eyes. And before you say anything, I know. You didn't sign up to learn strategy. You just wanted connection. But if you don't understand how an avoidant mind actually works, you will keep losing ground no matter how good your intentions are. So stop what you're doing for the next few minutes because this changes everything. Drop the word avoidant in the comments right now if you've ever felt like the more you gave, the more they pulled away. And subscribe because we need 1,000 subscribers and we are not close yet. Every single person watching this matters. Let's talk about the 4 things that are silently killing your value in front of an avoidant and how to stop doing them before it's too late. The first thing is over-explaining yourself. I want you to think about the last time you had a disagreement with this person, or the last time they went cold on you, or the last time they seemed distant for no reason you could understand. What did you do? Be honest with yourself. What was your first move? If you're like most people dealing with an avoidant, you explained yourself. Maybe you sent a long message. Maybe you called and tried to walk them through your feelings step by step. Maybe you laid out your logic carefully because you genuinely believed that if they just understood where you were coming from, everything would be okay. And it wasn't okay, was it? It never is. And here is why. Avoidants process the world differently from the way you do. When you over-explain, when you pour out your emotional reasoning, when you give them paragraph after paragraph of your inner world, they don't receive it as love. They don't receive it as clarity. What they receive is pressure. What they feel in that moment is walls closing in. The avoidant brain is wired through years of experience and pattern to treat emotional intensity as a threat. It's not that they're cruel. It's not that they don't care. It's that their nervous system has been trained to associate too much emotional content with loss of freedom, with being overwhelmed, with the beginning of something that ends badly for them. So when you explain yourself at length, what you're doing without knowing it is confirming their deepest fear. That being close to you means being flooded. That being with you means constantly managing your emotional world. And the moment they feel that, they create distance. Not because you're too much, but because they haven't developed the capacity to hold that much, and they don't know how to tell you that, so they just leave. And the devastating part is that the more anxious you feel about their distance, the more you explain. And the more you explain, the more they pull away. And the more they pull away, the more anxious you feel. It's a loop that destroys value without either of you fully understanding what's happening. So what do you do instead? You say less. Not because you're playing games, not because you're pretending your feelings don't exist, but because a person who doesn't need to justify themselves constantly is a person who reads as secure. And security is the single most attractive quality to an avoidant because it is the thing they never quite learn to feel in themselves. When you stop over-explaining, something interesting happens. There's space. And in that space, the avoidant starts to wonder. They start to fill in the gaps themselves. They start moving toward you because you're not suffocating the connection with too many words. Practice saying one thing instead of 10. Practice letting your statement stand on its own. Practice the discomfort of not defending yourself and watch what happens to the dynamic. The second thing that kills your value in front of an avoidant is making your happiness dependent on them. This one is hard to hear because it feels so natural. When you care about someone, their mood affects your mood. When they're warm, your whole day gets better. When they're cold, everything feels grey. That's not weakness. That's just what it feels like to be emotionally invested in a human being. But here's the problem. Avoidants can feel your dependency. They can sense it the way you can sense when someone is watching you from across the room. And the moment they sense it, you become a source of responsibility to them rather than a source of enjoyment. Think about that word, responsibility. Avoidants already struggle with emotional closeness. They already feel internally conflicted about letting people in. And if they start to feel like your emotional well-being rests on their shoulders, they don't rise to that occasion. They run from it. It's not because they're selfish. Well, sometimes it is. But mostly it's because they are terrified of failing you. Terrified of being the reason someone is hurt. And the easiest way to guarantee they never fail you is to never get close enough to be responsible for you in the first place. So when your happiness visibly orbits around them, when your texts are warmer or colder based on how they treated you yesterday, when you light up too much when they pay attention and visibly dim when they don't, you are doing something that feels like love, but actually drives them away. You are making yourself a mirror for their inconsistency. And nobody, not even the most secure person in the world, wants to be constantly reminded of the damage they're capable of causing. The version of you that an avoidant is most drawn to is the version that has a full life. The version that has things going on that have nothing to do with them. The version that enjoys their time with the avoidant but doesn't collapse in their absence. The version that brings energy to the relationship rather than drawing energy from it. That version is magnetic. Not because it's mysterious or calculated, but because it's genuinely self-sufficient in a way that the avoidant recognizes as healthy and doesn't know how to access in themselves. Now, I'm not telling you to pretend. I'm not telling you to fake enthusiasm for a life you're not living. I'm telling you to actually build that life. Go do the thing you've been putting off. See the people you've been neglecting. Pour into yourself with the same intensity you've been pouring into this person who keeps pulling away. Because here's the deeper truth. The moment your happiness genuinely stops depending on them, the whole equation changes. You stop chasing, they start noticing. And the avoidant, for the first time in your dynamic, starts to wonder if they're the one at risk of losing something. That shift, that real internal shift, is more powerful than any tactic you could ever try. The third thing that kills your value in front of an avoidant is punishing them for their withdrawal. Here's the scene. They go distant, they take forever to reply, they cancel plans, they give you one-word answers when yesterday they were warm and present, and you feel it. Of course you feel it. You're not a robot. So you go cold back, or you make a comment designed to sting just a little, or you become visibly pouty in a way that communicates, I'm hurting and I need you to fix this. Or you start testing them, pulling away yourself, waiting to see if they'll chase, waiting to see if they'll notice. And when they don't chase the way you hoped, the whole thing escalates. Now you're in a standoff neither of you asked for, and the connection that was already fragile has taken another hit. Here's what you need to understand about why this is so damaging, specifically with an avoidant. An avoidance withdrawal is almost never about you the way you think it is. Now, sometimes, yes, something you did triggered them. But more often, their withdrawal is an internal process. They get overwhelmed by closeness and they need to regulate. They pull back not to punish you, but to feel like themselves again. To feel like they have breathing room, to feel like the relationship isn't consuming their sense of self. And when you punish them for that withdrawal, when you match their coldness or add guilt on top of their distance, you teach them something. You teach them that coming back is expensive. You teach them that returning to you after a period of space means walking into emotional consequences. And an avoidant who believes that returning is costly will take longer and longer to come back each time. Until one day, they just don't. This is one of the core reasons avoidant relationships deteriorate over time, even when both people genuinely care for each other. The punishing cycle makes closeness feel dangerous, and an avoidant who has learned that closeness leads to conflict or guilt or emotional labor will always choose distance. So what do you do instead? You stay grounded. You don't pretend the withdrawal doesn't bother you. But you don't perform your pain for them either. You give them space with dignity. You go live your life. You let them come back without making them pay for having left. And when they do come back, and they usually do, you meet them with the version of yourself that isn't keeping score. That version is rare. That version is precious. That version makes them feel safe in a way they don't feel with most people. And something in them, even if they never say it out loud, knows that. The goal isn't to be a pushover. The goal isn't to let them treat you however they want with no standards. There is absolutely a version of this where you have a clear, calm conversation about what you need. But that conversation happens from a place of strength, not from a place of retaliation. And timing matters enormously. You don't have that conversation when they've just come back from a withdrawal. You have it when things are good, when there's warmth between you, when they feel connected to you. That is when an avoidant is most open, not when they already feel cornered. The fourth thing that kills your value in front of an avoidant is being too available. And I want to be really careful here because I know this one sounds manipulative. I know it sounds like I'm telling you to play games or create fake scarcity. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is something much deeper and much more real than that. When you are too available to an avoidant, you remove one of the core experiences that makes human connection feel meaningful. You remove the experience of wanting something and not immediately having it. You remove the slight tension that makes reaching out feel like something worth doing. You remove the subtle uncertainty that keeps attention alive. Avoidants in particular, because of the way they're wired, need to experience desire in order to feel connected. They don't maintain connection through constant contact the way an anxious person might. They maintain connection through a kind of rhythmic reaching out and pulling back that mirrors their internal world. And when you eliminate any possibility of that rhythm by being constantly, immediately, fully available, you actually interfere with the only relationship dynamic they know how to sustain. But beyond the psychology of it, there's something else happening when you're too available. You signal, without words, that you don't have much pulling at your attention, that this relationship is at the center of everything you do. And to an avoidant, that level of centrality feels less like love and more like pressure. People who are genuinely living full, interesting, self-directed lives are not always immediately available. Not because they're calculating, because they're busy, because they have things they care about, because they exist independently of any one relationship. And that independence reads as value. It reads as someone who has chosen to be here rather than someone who has nowhere else to be. Now, availability isn't just about response time. It's also emotional availability. When you are always ready to process, always ready to dive deep, always emotionally on call for whatever they need to discuss, you create an atmosphere of intensity that an avoidant finds suffocating over time. Give them the chance to miss you. Give yourself the chance to miss them. Don't answer every message the moment it arrives. Don't always be free when they suggest plans, not because you're playing a game, but because you actually have a life that takes priority over engineering the perfect response strategy. And honestly, when you actually fill your time with things that matter to you, you stop obsessing over their patterns. You stop reading into response times. You stop analyzing every message for signs of interest or withdrawal. You become genuinely less available because you're genuinely more engaged with your own existence. And that shift, that authentic shift, is felt. It changes the entire energy between you. Now, here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. Because these four things, over-explaining, tying your happiness to them, punishing their withdrawal, being too available, they all have something in common. Do you see it? They all come from a place of anxiety. They all come from a deep fear that if you're not managing this relationship at every moment, if you're not filling every silence, if you're not making sure they know exactly how you feel and why, the whole thing will fall apart. And that fear is understandable because avoidants are genuinely unpredictable in ways that trigger anxiety. They go warm and then cold. They seem interested and then disappear. They say things that give you hope and then behave in ways that seem to contradict everything. Of course you're anxious. The The situation produces anxiety. But here is the crucial piece. The anxiety itself and how you act on it is what accelerates the very outcome you're afraid of. The more you act from anxiety, the more avoidant they become. The more avoidant they become, the more anxious you feel. The more anxious you feel, the more you do the 4 things I just described, and around you go. The only way to break the loop is to address the anxiety directly, not by stuffing it down, not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by recognizing that the anxiety is coming from a version of you that has decided your worth depends on whether this particular person chooses you. And that is never true. Your worth exists completely independent of their choices. Your value doesn't go up when they're warm and down when they're cold. It stays constant. The only question is whether you're behaving in a way that reflects that constant value, or whether you're behaving in a way that makes you look like someone who has forgotten it. That is what all 4 of these things come down to. They are all behaviors that communicate in one form or another, I'm not sure I'm enough, so I'm going to manage this very carefully to keep you from leaving. And to an avoidant, or frankly to anyone, that communication is devastating to attraction. The person who is enough doesn't over-explain. The person who is enough has a happiness that doesn't hinge on any one individual's behavior. The person who is enough doesn't retaliate from a place of fear. The person who is enough has a life that makes them genuinely, authentically not always available. And here's the thing that I really need you to hear before I finish. Working on these 4 things is not about becoming someone different for the sake of an avoidant. It is about becoming someone better for the sake of yourself. Because every single one of these shifts makes you a healthier, more grounded, more attractive human being in every context, not just in this relationship. The over-explaining, when you stop that, you become a cleaner communicator in every area of your life. The emotional dependency on one person, when you dissolve that, you become more capable of genuine happiness on your own terms. The punishing and the retaliation, when you release that, your relationships across the board become less exhausting and more nourishing. The constant availability. When you pull back from that, you start to rediscover who you actually are when you're not in the orbit of someone else's emotional weather. These are not tactics. These are not tricks. These are the qualities of a person who has done real internal work. And whether or not the avoidant in your life responds the way you hope, that work is yours forever. Now, I do want to say something about the avoidant specifically, because I think sometimes content like this can make it seem like the goal is simply to win them over. And I want to push back on that. The goal is not to make yourself into the perfect person who finally breaks through the avoidance walls. The goal is to become someone who knows their own worth so clearly that they can engage with anyone, including an avoidant, from a place of genuine security rather than fear. Because here's what actually happens when you do that work. One of 2 things occurs. Either the avoidant genuinely responds to the new dynamic and the relationship has a real chance of growing into something healthy, or you become so grounded in your own value that you start to see clearly whether this person is actually someone you want to be with at all, whether the connection is worth the work, whether you've been so focused on winning their love that you forgot to ask if their love is actually something that can make you happy. Both of those outcomes are good. Both of them represent growth. And both of them are only reachable when you stop doing the 4 things that are currently keeping you stuck. So let's go back over them one more time because I want them to land. Stop over-explaining. Say what you need to say once, clearly, and let it stand. If they don't respond the way you hope, that's information. But you don't need to repeat yourself. You don't need to justify yourself into connection. Stop making your happiness dependent on them. Build a life that is full and rich and real. Let them be a meaningful part of it without being the entire center of it. That fullness protects you and it attracts them. Stop punishing their withdrawal. Give them space to come back without making coming back feel like an ordeal. Stay grounded in yourself when they go quiet. And when you need to address the pattern, do it from warmth and at the right moment, not from hurt and in the middle of a standoff. Stop being too available. Let yourself want things and wait for them. Let them experience the same. Fill your time with your own life so genuinely that your availability decreases naturally. And watch what that does to the energy between you. These 4 shifts are not easy. I'm not going to pretend they are. They go against every instinct that love and anxiety have trained you toward. But they are the difference between a dynamic that slowly erodes every good thing between you and one that has a real chance at depth. You already know something isn't working. You watched this video for a reason. That reason is important. Listen to it and start making different choices, not for them, for yourself, because you deserve a relationship that doesn't cost you your sense of self just to maintain. That's where real love actually lives.